All right.
Mark.
Thank you, Darcy. There we go. So it's being recorded, Darcy. So we're good there. So then I will pass this off to Rod, and I'll let you take it from here.
All right. Well, thanks, Bob. You should be seeing my desktop in the window, all the various icons and my Windows Explorer window open. So as Bob mentioned, I'm sort of the mastermind behind this madness, and if you have any want to throw any darts, you throw them at me for this consultant workspace. So let's go over sort of the existing consultant workspace that you get from MDT right now. It's based on their internal production workspace, something that they had developed probably more than 25, maybe close to 30 years ago, before there was a good sort of structure for workspaces and projects and user configs and that kind of thing. So they put together something that worked for them, and this is what they've been using internally for all these years. And now, based on comments that they've been getting from the consultant community, you guys, they found this a little difficult to implement outside of MDT. So we did a first pass on this to take a look at what some of the issues were. And right off the bat, okay, you have the workspace, which is a typical Bentley folder where you put projects and standards and so forth. And well, they do have a file for configs and so forth, but the PCFs and the UCFs get merged together in the same folder, which really isn't a standard way of doing things. And there's no spot here for the standards for the DGN libraries and things like that. That's under Open Roads, and under various folders here, you might find different DGN libs poked in different folders and things. So our goal in setting this up for the consultants was to kind of use best practices and using the structure that Bentley kinds of gives you and going off of that, and something that might be a little easier to implement outside of MDT. So if I open up another window here where I've got sort of the new structure, and in the zip file that's going to be the consultant workspace, it's just a zip file that you'll just unzip to a location, and it's going to put everything under a Montana_DOT folder. So you can direct this any place that you want, but the default is set up so it goes to C Montana DOT. And we set this up so that now the workspace folder, it looks more like a standard what you'll find under C Program Data Bentley MicroStation Workspace. So we have the interfaces folder where we have the interfaces, and we have it set up so that you can run either straight MicroStation GeoPack on top of MicroStation or Power GeoPack. So the interfaces are there for both. Under the standards folder, this is where we put the standard MicroStation resource file. So if you're just running vanilla MicroStation, these will be the resources that you will load. So the font files and custom line styles in there, and our symbology folder, seed files in the seed folder. And so we pulled all that stuff out of the various folders where they were in the current workspace and put them, categorize them sort of like a normal configuration would. We did take their sort of standard programs and things that they deliver. Some of these, a lot of these you may not run, but we have a place for them in case you do need them. So that's under Workspace. And then we have Standards Open Roads, so that we have sort of the same folders replicated. But now under the DGN libs, these are Open Road specific mainly. Although we do have to load some of these up under standard MicroStation because there are level definitions in some of these files. We put them in Open Roads because there's Open Roads feature definitions in there as well. So there is a little commingling there between the two environments, but we split them up as best as possible. So here's GeoPack specific things. under the Workspace folder for the Standards Open Roads folder. Projects, we pulled out all the project PCFs, and then same with the user configs. Now, the other thing we found going through the user configs and the PCFs is there was a lot of redundant variable definitions in each one of these. So you pull up all of the PCFs and they all sort of had the same variable definitions, very little variation in those. So what we did is under the standards folder, pulled a lot of those out and put them in different categories of configuration files. So in the consultant workspace, the Montana DOT workspace standards folder is set up as the U-Station site folder. So these get executed, read in at the site level, all of these in order, and so we pulled those out. So hopefully we've got it set up so you don't have to come here and edit any of these. And we'll get into customizing the install here, I guess, in a few minutes. So we pulled a lot of that stuff out. The startup folder, again, I'll get to that in a few minutes, where after install and you want to launch this workspace, you will use one of these shortcuts and we can edit that file. Okay, the other thing we did is currently they have in the current workspace, there's a specific folder for user prefs. So we set up a separate folder just like and carried that forward. So user prefs get put to a different folder, and you can redirect that. And then same with the DGN folder. Internally at MDT, their document management system and their plotting system and everything relies on everything being in this DGN folder. So rather than trying to fix that and come up with a different way that might appease the consultants, because every consultant's office is going to be different, most likely, in where they store their DGNs and how they configure their projects. We kind of left this, and then we'll give you some instructions on maybe how to separate that out by project, and we'll take a look at that here in a little bit on customizing the install. So after, along with the zip file, you've got the installation instructions that will come up that you can load. So it takes you through how to do the default installation, some of the changes if you've worked with the previous version, and how to remap some of the variables and where things are going to be. And then a few steps on how to customize where the standards file go, the design files go, and the user preferences. So that you'll get that as part of the install as well. All right, so that's kind of a basic overview of how we set this up and sort of the methodology behind this. And again, we try to be consistent with the way other DOTs and Bentley and their consultants and so forth work with set up workspaces, and sort of a best practices kind of methodology here. So going through the basic install, like I said, once you, if you open up the zip file, and this might take a minute to open, maybe I shouldn't have double clicked on it, but so you'll see everything goes to Montana_DOT. So you can unzip this wherever you'd like, and the default, the way the configuration is set up is to go to C Montana DOT. And if you want to run it like that, under Workspace Startup, there are 3 icons. So whether you want to run Geopack, MicroStation, or Power Geopack, we have icons configured to use this startup configuration file, which is already configured. And all you have to do is drag one of these out to your desktop, like I've got the Montana MDT Power Geopack here that I'm running. And if you launch that, it will start you up and bring you to the MDT workspace. So you can, the user pretty much stays the same. You can use their project configs. The difference here is it will load different menus or in different sets of DGN libs. based on these. There might be some tweaking we have to do on these yet, but for the most part, that's about all I do. Again, we took a lot of the these are very much smaller than the previous versions. But you pick the project that you want, and they'll all point to this, wherever the DGN folder is set, and then you can create a file and open it, and you get then the Montana standards. So if you want to just run it out of the box, you can put everything under C Montana_DOT, and it opens up everything without any changes necessary. So we see in their workspace, we've got their custom tool menus, and we've also got, you'll see we have their level definitions. So everything is in place here. Custom line styles. Where are we at here? So all the workspace resources are there available. One thing that you have that you can run that maybe you didn't have in the current workspace is a lot of these macros now. We've gone through a bunch of these and updated the definitions so that they're based on the new variables we defined. So if you've got those defined, it'll find some of the things in the correct location. So for instance, MDT maps. We want to attach maybe one of these background images, attach, and it goes out and finds that image that's delivered with the workspace, and you can attach that. So some of these will work. A lot of the macros here under MDT apps and road tools will now work. Things such as DocuPlot and other things like that are not going to work because they're hard-coded to excuse me, internal paths that just and you're not going to run those kinds of things anyway. So some of the, like I said, a lot of the tools that didn't work before will now work in this new consultant workspace. All right, so that's it out of the box. Now, a lot of you probably need to change where things go and don't want everything under Montana DOT on the C drive, and maybe you want to put these standards out on a network drive someplace, and you have different ways of setting things up. Well, we can do that too. So, and we've got a facility set up for that. So I've made a W drive here where I put I've got MicroStation preferences under one, so if you want to split out how your user preferences are stored, you can set that up and redirect the preferences out to a network drive, so it would follow users around to each computer. The preferences have to be unique for each user, so for every user you have, you'll have to assign a folder for your preferences with that user's username, and we'll show how to set that up in a minute. So you can remap the preferences that way. MicroStation standards, so here's, instead of C Montana DOT, this would be W MicroStation standards Montana DOT. And the workgroup and workspace folders could go there. And here you have your projects and startup and so forth. So that gets carried over there, and we're remapping then the UStation site to go to this location. And then projects. A lot of you want to have your own folders for projects. Instead of putting every DGN in a single folder, you might have different projects that you're working on for MDT that you want to put your different DGNs in. So we'll see how to set that up. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, in the standard install, under Workspace Startup, it delivers this startup.cfg. And we have three main variables that we define. MDT path is going to define where that workspace folder is. The MDT DGN is going to define where the DGN files get stored. And then the MDT user prefs define where the user preferences go. And this is my edited one, but if we take a look at the standard one delivered with the install, this is what it looks like. So MDT path is C Montana DOT, the DGN path goes to the DGN folder, and the user prefs goes to the user prefs folder. So it all points to these three folders: the DGN, the workspace, and the user prefs. So with a little editing and breaking these out, again on my new W drive structure, we can change how that goes. And break that out. So we've moved the workspace path to this folder, and then the user prefs go to this folder, and then notice we put the Windows username variable there, so that all you have to do is make a folder with the username, and then it will put the user preferences in there. The other thing we've done with the user prefs, with the sample folder that we've delivered, we've set it up so that users have their own spot for their own cell libraries if they want to make those, their DGN libs, so if they want to make their own toolboxes and things, they have a place built into the configuration to put that kind of stuff. Same with VBAs, if they want to put record a few macros or dig into a few VBAs and do that, they have a place to put those here in their personal preferences folder. And then the other thing we give them would be a personal function key menu, a place to store their geographic coordinate system favorites, a mouse button file, there's AccuDraw shortcuts. If they create their own spell check dictionary, it's already set up for them to store those things here in the user preferences folder. So if you just copy the template that's been delivered and use it with the user prefs, and then just remap that variable, all these things go with it, and will be set up so the users have their own places to put things. All right, out of the box, everybody shares the same user pref, the same UCF files, which in a network environment might not be a good thing. So to remap the user configs, we're just going to remap ustation user to the same location as the user prefs folder goes to. So it's going to be looking there for the UCF. And to make maintenance a little bit easier, we'll give it the name personal. So notice all these files have the prefix personal. And we do that for two reasons. Number one, it makes updates and maintenance a lot easier. So if you want to add a new user, all you do is take your template folder, copy it, and rename it to the username of the user. And then all these files, you don't have to rename all these files. And the other thing with the eye looking forward to the Connect edition, in MicroStation Connect and OpenRoads Designer Connect, that's sort of the standard that they use. You get a personal.ucf that you cannot change, so we kind of go along with those guidelines. And by default, you get a personal UPF and a personal this. So we're just kind of carrying that naming standard and implementing it here. So those two reasons we use personal instead of the username here. Okay, so we can create a blank text file for the UCF, or bring a UCF in from someplace else and name it personal. And then just these two lines will redirect the MicroStation to look to that folder then for your UCF file. So everybody can have their own UCF as well. And then the MDT DGN path, if you want to have it look to different projects for your DGN files, you just put the UStation project name variable in there, and then it can look for the files in that location where you keep your projects folders. So then once I got that set up, got too many windows going here. If I go back to the standards folder and the workspace startup where we're at, I have to change this shortcut then, either on my desktop or after it's out there. go to the properties and change this last part where it says -WC, and then change the path to that config file. So it's getting it from the new location. So if you want to put this out on a network drive, again, you make your folder structure, edit these couple of variables here, and then update the shortcut so it goes to that, looks for that config file in that location. Once you do that, you can kick off MicroStation or Power Geopack from that location. And now notice the username, the user is personal because it's picking up my personal UCF there. And then I made a couple of other projects here, I-15 bridge replacement, I-90 resurface, and if I click on I-15 bridge replacement, it switches the folder to look to that folder for the DGN files for that project. If I switch back to the resurface, I have the same test file in both, so the files don't change, but that path changes. And then you can load up whatever interface you want then for those. And then it will look to your network drive then for these. All right, and if you do set it up in the network environment, again, you put all these on your server drive, and then all you have to do is copy these shortcuts to everybody's desktop. So just you can have the users copy it, or if you have your IT staff or something has the ability to push things out to users' desktops, you can just have it automatically copy the right shortcut out to their desktop, and they've got it, and it's all set. Notice I have a couple of other variations in here. In this scenario with the shortcuts, the user has to click on the designated shortcut to launch the MDT workspace and load those standards. Well, if your only reason for running MicroStation or Geopack is to work on MDT projects, or that's the default you want everybody to bring up when they start MicroStation, we can do a different kind of setup here. And that's what these other two are for. I've made a sample startup config that all it does is going to include this startup config here. So instead of having a shortcut that calls the startup config, we're going to put this, oops, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong screen. We put this configuration file with a single line in it, and we insert that into the default MicroStation folder, and it will read this file in at the appropriate time and then load the standards that way. And to do that, you'll have to disable a couple things here. It's the same thing, same file as the previous version, but we've commented out the first two lines, the msdir and this include of msdir config, and the last line. And the reason for that is when you launch from a startup icon with this -WC, it does not read the mslocal.cfg that comes delivered with MicroStation. So your config file that you read here has to replicate what that mslocal.cfg does. And that's why we have those definitions in this file. But since we're going to use the default MicroStation startup and use the mslocal, we don't have to define that. So we comment those things out. So then what you would do then in that case is if I copy this file and place it under C program files x86, Bentley in the product folder. So in this case I'm using Power Geopack. So I go to Power Geopack and the config system folder, and if I copy this file in there, that Z file, oh, it's not going to let me do it because it's a network. Yeah. So I have to copy to my desktop first or someplace local. And then I can copy it into here. Okay, so now if I put it in the product config system folder, this file automatically gets read when MicroStation launches, or Power Geopack in this case. So when it hits this file, it just says include this file, and then it loads all of the Montana DOT standards. And the reason I like to keep this file simple is just one line, because you know, if you want to make changes or you get updates from MDT, you don't have to go out to each user every time and update this startup file or whatever. It's pointing to the W drive, so whatever changes you make here under W MicroStation standards will automatically get read in. You don't have to bug your IT staff to go push this out, or your users to go put a new startup file out here. So some of this is doing this kind of thing is documented in that the document that comes with the download. We are going to add a couple more instructions on how to set this up and redirect the project name. That's not in there just yet, but. All right, so that's I think that's about all I had to present formally of where things were and sort of how it was structured. I guess at this point we can open it up for questions, and if anybody has any questions, type them in the chat window, and we'll answer them as they come in.
Thanks, Rod. We'll let people get in there and start typing. A couple things just to add. Like Rod says, we're going to update the PDF document with a few more instructions for you guys. But you can expect to see this probably by the end of the week available for you guys from MDT. So it is very shortly coming. We've got one more presentation, so tell all your friends tomorrow. And yeah, and then if anything, again, pops in your head after this session and you want to ask a question later, please send your questions to Jen Jewett, and then they'll get back to us and we can help answer those questions. Thaddeus, you have anything to add?
No, I don't have any additions. Jen Jewett, as Bob said, would be the primary contact if you have any questions, and then I physically am in Billings, and that doesn't separate me from the resources in Helena, so we're all available to answer questions for a while, and we look forward to helping.
Yeah. Question came in from Matt Ashby about the guide sign stuff. That has been taken out. We had a sort of a test period where some of the consultants tested this workspace and looked it over, and at that point the download was 1.5 gigabytes. Notice it's now down to 745 megabytes, so we cut the size down in half. So yeah, we found a lot of that kind of stuff and took it out that we didn't need anymore. There's probably some more cleanup we can do, and probably in future releases we'll get those things cleaned out that don't need to be in there. But
and as far as future releases, we are looking to, our goal is to update this quarterly for the consultants. There's always going to be updates at MDT. We're working on a method and a procedure to get the internal updates at MDT to the consultants. If there's a critical update that needs to be a hot fix, whatever you want to call it, that needs to be pushed out to you guys, you'll be notified right away that there's an update. But the goal moving forward is a quarterly release. So that's kind of our time frame as far as of right now. Maybe an October release would be the next update if there's not a hot fix. So that's what we're kind of looking at for keeping this up to date, and so you guys have some way of knowing what's coming up next, and if you made a request, how long should you wait before it maybe makes it into the workspace. So we're working on a procedure and a protocol for updating the consultant workspace. Well, I'll give everybody another minute here if they want to type something in quick. Like, don't hang up yet. But if you guys don't have any other questions, I think we're good to go, guys. I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. And again, if you do have any questions, whether they're right now or when you guys do get it finally downloaded and installed, please contact MDT, and we will work with you guys to make it as easy as possible for you guys to work on MDT projects. So thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you all later.